Hey guys, welcome back to the True North podcast. Really excited for this week. My name is James McKenzie. I've got Ryan Moore with me, and today we are welcoming Christopher LaRue to the podcast.
Hey guys.
So Christopher was on a few weeks ago during kind of a post-frontier podcast, and on this one, we really wanted to invite him in because he's got an incredible story. You hear about guys that maybe have enough kids to fill out a basketball team. I think Christopher has enough for like a football team, offense and defense.
We've got some reserves.
Got some reserves in there. Yeah. So he's got a wild life. I think he's had like 13 different careers, like not just jobs, but like actual careers. And so just a fascinating life. But this is a guy that has been a huge part of True North and what we do. And he's led tons of different things, like not just camps, but like groups and events, and just an incredibly reliable guy who's filled with so much wisdom. And we wanted to bless you all with his walk with God and his story. And so, Christopher, welcome in, man.
Thanks, man.
Yeah. So let's start with, first of all, how did you get introduced to True North in the first place?
Well, so at the time, back, I'm trying to remember, I think it was 2016, I was walking with Christ, but I was an island. I was alone. And so we had several areas where we had intersections with men, but in other families, but we weren't really doing life with any of them. And so one of those families was Williams Espino in the Espino family. And we had, I think two of my boys were playing soccer on a soccer team that he coached. And so one of his kids was having a birthday party and I got invited. And so there were several families that came to that birthday party that were part of a co-op that we did homeschool with. And I'm standing there at the party. I know all these guys kind of really loosely, and I'm kind of making small talk with one of the men, Kirk Hickey, and he brings up this backpacking trip that they're going to go on, and I'm like, okay, I like backpacking. Mm-hmm. Tell me more about that. And so I end up in a van a few months later with 11 guys that I don't know going to the Pecos Wilderness. And we end up on top of this mountain, and I realize that I'm sitting around a fire with half of the board and the board of directors for True North.
Yeah.
And I'd heard about True North before, but I just didn't really feel like it was for me. Back in 2008, 2009, my wife and I were leading Wild at Heart and captivating studies with couples for life groups that we led at the time. And so I'm like, yeah, I've been there, done that. Mm-hmm. And so we came home and man, I was like, okay, how do I get involved? Where do I go? And I went to base camp, and man, that first base camp, I just felt like I had come home. Mm-hmm. This is home. This is what I want. And
was that at Anadarko?
It was Anadarko. Yeah. And I mean, the rest is history. So I went to that base camp as a camper, and then I went to my next base camp as a shadow, and then I've pretty well directed every base camp since then that I've been to.
Yeah.
And so this is really home for me.
That's awesome. Well, talk about your family right now and where you guys are at. I know you got how many kids you have. I can never keep up with it.
Man, we've got 8 kids now.
Yeah.
And so early on, we had a miscarriage, and my wife has her family has a history of issues. Mm-hmm. And so we really thought that we weren't going to be able to have kids. And we prayed, and God opened her womb, and we pretty well stayed pregnant from there on. So now we've got 8 now. I've got 5 boys and 3 girls. And
the oldest one's
he's 15.
Yeah, about to turn 16, right? You're driving with him.
So he's keeping me prayed up as we drive around. He's doing a great job. and my youngest is a year and a half old.
Yeah.
So
So wild. And then you guys have taken the homeschool route. And so your wife stays at home with them.
she does
Yeah.
more work than I could ever imagine.
Yeah.
And she teaches our kids. I joke sometimes that I'm the principal, but I really have a hands-off approach with them. I get to tutor math and science occasionally, as now, especially as they're getting older.
Mm-hmm.
But she's a rock star.
That's awesome. How long have y'all been married?
17 years.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yes.
Well, let's go. I'd love to start on kind of your story and your walk with God overall. Have you been walking with God since you were a kid, or did that happen later on?
Man, I didn't grow up in a God-centered family. I really want to honor my parents today, but they didn't. They didn't bring me up in the church.
Mm-hmm.
I watched them find Jesus and dump the liquor cabinet down the drain, and then slowly fill the liquor cabinet back up,
Mm-hmm.
and then find Jesus and dump the liquor cabinet down the drain.
Mm.
And then they did the best they could to love me. They really did. And so I remember going to stay with my grandma on the farm during the summertime, and she walked with Jesus. She really did. And, we really expected Jesus to come back at any time. There was a rapture going to happen, and that's a whole another thing. But that was something that she really believed, and they preached. And so I remember waking up at night. Sometimes just I'd get up and I'd run into her room because I knew if Jesus came back, he was taking her,
Mm-hmm.
but I wasn't. He was leaving me.
How old were you then?
Anywhere from probably 6 or 7 years on.
Yeah.
And so I was exposed to Jesus, but I didn't walk with him. I didn't know him. I prayed a prayer when I was 6 and got baptized, but that was just a bath in front of a bunch of people.
Yeah.
It was really meaningless. And I lived for myself for a really long time. I met Jesus face to face when I was 16. And so my house burned down, and I was living in a hotel. I had no supervision, and I was really just going off the rails, and just came to a moment where I was ready and I wanted to kill myself. And I cried out to Jesus. I said, God, you take my life or I will. And he did.
Mm.
And I was so noticeably different after that the kids at school would say something like, dude, like what happened? And so before then, I just kind of believed that the harder I could be, the more I would be liked. And that was kind of how I found my validation, was to get the Camel Wide cigarette and break the filter off and smoke it backwards, or, like whatever the hardest thing to do was not good enough. I wanted to edge it just a little more so that I could get validated.
Yeah.
And I mean, really, that was just, I know now it was stupid,
Yeah.
but.
Do you have any insight to what was driving that?
Oh, part of it was things that my parents would say, and the whole liquor cabinet thing. And, I just thought that hard was cool, and I wanted to be cool.
Yeah.
And I needed to be cool, and I wasn't cool. I was like the farthest thing from cool. I was like the youngest kid in my grade. It was super awkward, but I thought I could make up the difference if I was tougher or harder or badder than the next guy.
Yeah. So what did that phase of life kind of roll into? So 16, you have a couple more years of high school. Where'd you go from that?
Yeah, so that was kind of the end of my sophomore. Was it sophomore? No, it was the end of my junior year of high school, and so ended up going into my senior year walking with Christ, and completely turned everything around. And I felt called to the ministry at the time. I was going to Council Road Baptist Church a lot. I ended up interning there after after I graduated, and was just pursuing God with everything I had.
Mm-hmm.
And I met a girl and fell in love, or so I thought. And I felt like I really know now that God was telling me to pull back after I graduated high school, and I went all in.
Mm-hmm.
And so I chose her over him, really is what I did. And ended up walking away from the church, walked away from my calling because I was feeding others, but I wasn't being fed. And so I burned out and ended up joining the Marine Corps because I didn't know what else to do. In fact, Jeff Polonsik and I were hanging out one day, and he was like, "Well, I got to go." "Where are you going?" He's like, "Well, I'm going to go meet with this Marine recruiter." So I went with him, and I joined, and he didn't. And so, yeah. So God used the Marine Corps to make me into a man. It's kind of pulverized the boy, if you will.
Yeah.
And so I got a lot of validation through that, and drawing up into manhood. And
How old were you when you started in the Marine Corps?
I joined when I was 20.
Okay.
And so came home from uh, training and got married. And then 9/11 happened, and I was shipped off. Did some tours then, and came home and got divorced.
Mm-hmm.
And she left because she just didn't want me anymore. And that really sent me spiraling a little
Mm-hmm.
bit, to have her leave like that. But all the time God was wooing me back.
Yeah.
And so Jeff, I mentioned a minute ago, like Jeff and Michael Martin, some of you guys may know them.
Yeah.
They've been like my circle for a long time. And when she left, I ended up moving in with Michael Martin and his wife Tiffany. And God's timing is that when I moved in with them, the week that I moved in, Michael's small group started the men's fraternity, which is a slow walk through what we do through base camp. It's like take that and do it over 3 years.
Yeah.
And man, I just went from the physical bringing up into manhood right into the spiritual bringing up into manhood. And it was then that I learned what it meant to be a man. And God really that's when I really began to walk and seek and be the man that I am now.
What are some of the things of, like you say, becoming a man or that time? What are some of the things you can point to that changed in your mindset that meant that took you from being a boy to being a man? I know that there's a lot more to it than just you can say in a sentence, but is there anything you can?
There's so much, but I think the boy just lives for himself. The self-gratification, the self-validation, the whatever that looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And to be a true man of God, especially, is to live for others,
Mm-hmm.
and ultimately live for Christ. Christ in me, through me, is serving others and leading others and loving others. And so, I think some of the key things that I learned that changed in me were like in my first marriage, like I just thought if I give her whatever she wants, then that's how I love her.
Mm-hmm.
And I was really passive in that, but it wasn't necessarily a passivity. It was just whatever you want. I mean, I watched my dad do that. And so I kind of just thought that's what men do. And man, I realized, especially going into the men's fraternities, that gosh, did that wrong. And I did that wrong. And I did that wrong. And I'd like to do that over again. And boy, I made a whole list of things. So, but I think if you boil it down to just that one statement, a man lives for others and the boy lives for himself.
Mm-hmm. That's good. What was next after that season?
Well, I got on the fire department. So I was a paid professional firefighter. And on my days off, I I ended up moving out to a boys ranch, and I lived at a boys ranch and served there. And then they had a ropes course and sports camp that kind of supported the ranch and did some other things. And so I was in charge of the camp, and I got to do that on my days off. And man, I just went like full tilt adrenaline junkie.
Mm.
I mean, I got into rock climbing and adventure racing and backpacking and man, anything wild and rugged. Like I wanted to do it. Like if you could jump out of it or off of it or ride it, or like I was all in.
Yeah. What was your favorite backpacking experience that you've had?
My favorite, gosh, I don't know that I'd be able to. I've got some memorable ones. We were up in Colorado, and this dude that I went with, his name was Sky. He was crazy, absolutely crazy. And we were rock climbing this face, and I knew that it was a multi-pitch and we weren't going to be able to summit. And so he brought these mats that we would hang on the rock and sleep on the side of it. And that was absolutely crazy to me.
Yeah.
And then another one of my most memorable ones was at the Eagle Rock Loop in Arkansas. I got to take my oldest 3 boys on that this weekend. But we were out there, gosh, it's been 20 years ago, and the storm that blew up on us was just insane. It was one of the only times, one of 2 times that I've ever heard the sizzle of lightning before it strikes. And so you could hear the sizzle and then the strike and then the boom.
Mm-hmm.
It was like we were getting bombed. And just laying in my tent, the rain coming through the fly, and trying to go to sleep was just like, okay, God, I'm at your mercy, whatever. I like, and so just the sheer and raw power of nature.
Yeah.
Just
That sounds pretty intense.
yeah.
What's okay, so what's the like scariest adrenaline related thing that you've done? You said you've jumped out of things, climbed things. What's the one you were most nervous about? Or maybe you shouldn't have even done.
Man, we were rock climbing at in the Narrows down in the Wichita Mountains, and there was this rock face. I'm trying to remember what the name of it was. Anyway, it went up. There was a kind of a ceiling. You had to crawl. You'd come across the ceiling, and then there was a crack, or not a crack, but a corner. And so I'm standing in the corner, and I'm kind of resting, honestly, because I'm just cranked, and I'm trying to figure out what protection I want to put in this crack, and my foot popped off of this corner I was standing in, and so like I'm done, I'm falling, and so I pushed off, and as I fell, I watched like my first 3 protection pieces fail, like they popped out, and like a nut, a couple of cams or whatever, and so as I'm falling, I'm watching them go clink, clink, clink. And then the 4th one held. And so, it's a dynamic rope, so it stretches. And so by the time it was all over, I found myself just sitting on the mountain looking at the sky, and I was just giggling. I can just remember I was giggling like I don't know that I've ever giggled before. It was all that endorphin dump, I guess. I don't know, but and I just looked down at Tyler Black, my belay at the time, and he was just like, "I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill you." And he looked white, and I was just giggling. And,
that's wild.
And so yeah.
Dang. So you were in the Marines. You come back home, divorce. You find God and a deeper passion and your more masculine identity in God.
Right.
Started adventuring. What from there?
So in 2007, I met my wife at the camp. So she came out with a church.
Okay.
That had their youth leaders there, and so it was a really large church. And so there was a bunch of leaders that came out, and we were taking them through the ropes course and leadership program. And I think we ended up breaking them up into like 6 different groups. And she will say to this day that I picked her group, but I really didn't. I let the other facilitators pick what groups that they would have so that I wouldn't have any bias in any way.
Yeah.
And I was trying to be so professional, like she'd caught my eye, and I was like, like I'm in charge of this whole thing.
Yeah.
I can't, fraternize. I don't even know what to call that, but I can't flirt with this girl because like those are lines, right? But by the time that they left, it was like, I think 3 days later they were there. I finally just broke down and asked her, it's like, can I call you?
Yeah.
And man, all of the leadership, everybody was like, it's about time. Just like, oh my gosh. And I was like, really? I was trying so hard. And man, that was...
You didn't ever have the moment on the ropes course, like the golf swing thing where you reach around and hold them and show them a golf swing. Did you do that on the ropes course?
No, I did not. I did not. I tried to stay away, honestly.
Yeah.
But man, that was May in 2007, and we got married in August of 2007. And so,
that's quick.
You knew, huh?
We just knew. And I was in community then. So when the M word came up relatively soon, I was like, no, we need to pump the brakes. And, but we prayed about it and decided that we would let my closest friends dictate our speed. And so it took me 2 weeks to ask the first guy what he thought, because I knew what he was going to say. And, so I finally, told Todd, hey, like, this is what I'm thinking. Cause they already knew. And I just expected a swift kick right in the groin. And then he was like, oh, awesome. So we're going to do this fast, like quick, not a long engagement. And I'm like, who are you? And then, told a couple more guys, and it was the same story. So I was like, okay, well, let's do it. And we did. Now we have 8 kids.
I think you had told me earlier that you had just had shoulder surgery or something, because whenever we were talking about my shoulder rehab, you were like, yeah, if I had listened, I wouldn't have been at the course, and I would have never met Mel. So yeah.
So May 1st, I had my shoulder completely reconstructed, and then May 7th, I was running the ropes course.
Yeah.
And then they were there, and I don't know. God knew.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So if I hadn't had the surgery, I'd have been at the fire station that day.
Yeah.
And so.
And you just so happened to be in that group.
So happened. She was in my group.
Yeah.
She swears I chose it.
That's so good.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So, how long? So you're married with her. Still working at the fire department for a while, or what was the process like with that?
Yeah. So I came off a disability for my shoulder back at the fire station for like 4 weeks, and ended up quitting, put my resignation in. Really thought that we would be at the camp full time. My heart was to do ministry. And so we stayed at the camp for about a year afterwards. And what I didn't know at the time was we were about to go into the ringer. And so both of us kind of had some rough stuff in our past and family history of things. And so I knew that there were generational strongholds in our family, and some sins that I could see coming down from fathers to sons and fathers to sons to me. And so I wanted those broken. And so I prayed God break those. And I didn't know what that was going to be.
Yeah.
But we sent out letters of support so that we could stay at the camp and work out there. And we got nothing. I don't know how many letters we sent out. We got nothing back. But we stayed out there a year and watched our savings account grow. We left there, and I worked for a very large, prominent church for about a year, running their tech team and doing tech stuff for them. And then we stayed there. We were at that church for a year and learned and grew in some amazing ways. And then we had the opportunity to go to Las Vegas. And so we moved out to Las Vegas and was kind of an associate pastor out there and youth pastor and ran a church. And the mission went well. We were only there for, I think, 9 months. And during that time, it was during the housing crisis and crunch, like 2009 was full ramifications there. So we'd move into a place and then get foreclosed on, have to move again. And it was just crazy. So we came home from that. I ended up getting fired from my job for conduct unbecoming a minister because I was challenging my boss for some of the stuff that he was doing and that I disagreed with. And so ended up going to a conference with him and came home, and on the drive home just unloaded what I felt like God was putting on my heart. And so we got back to the church together and high-fived, hugged, prayed together. And he thanked me and told me that no one had ever pushed him as hard or been as honest and loving as I had been, and then fired me the next day.
Dude.
And so, that was wounding in a really large way. And so we came home, just devastated. In fact, we didn't have enough money to make it back to Oklahoma City. And one of the guys in the church heard what had happened, and he knocked on the door the next day, and I opened the door and he just walked in carrying boxes and box tape, and opened my doors, my cupboards, and started packing my stuff up. I'm like, bro, what are you doing? He's like, well, you got fired, right? I'm like, well, yeah, but he's like, well, we got to get you back to Oklahoma. So they bought a ticket for Melanie and my first son, Braden, to fly home, and he boxed up my house and put us in a trailer and drove here, and we unloaded it, and he turned around and drove back. And I mean, God's hand is always evident. But man, if I'm honest, I was mad.
Yeah.
I was mad at God.
Yeah.
I was mad that I'd stepped out and what I felt like was obedience and faith. And just, I mean, I had burns on my face from just hitting the concrete, right? And so at that time I decided that, man, you can be God and I will worship you, but I'm done trusting you.
Yeah.
And so I enrolled in school and I was going to be a doctor.
I'd love to spend a little more time. I think, I just feel God's stirring of sit in this story, because I think that there's so many men that could learn from this experience you've had in your life. Because like you said, the camp experience, that was a calling that didn't work out, right?
Yeah.
And then step into another church environment. I don't know if it felt as much of a calling or if there was much disappointment attached to that. But then this Las Vegas church environment was, like you said, a deep wound, and especially the way that it was handled. And
well, I mean, if I go back to the camp, so the executive director of the camp at that time, he and I went backpacking on the Eagle Rock Loop together. We experienced that storm together. We did a lot of things. He was one of my best friends. And when we were praying through whether we should stay there or not, my prayer was, God, slam the door or leave it open, because I knew that my heart was there. And so he called me one morning and met me in his driveway, which was just it was a short walk over there, with a coffee cup in his hand, and just said, it's time for you to leave, and walked back in his house. And that was the last time I ever talked to him. I haven't spoken to him since.
Wow.
And so
that's wounding.
Yeah. So I'm carrying that, and then this thing happened at the church in Vegas, and so I mean, I don't even know.
Yeah.
There aren't words.
Yeah, and I think maybe going into the rest of your story will kind of reveal God's goodness in that. I think just our audience, I'm just thinking of the guy in the audience that we know so many men that just feel so called, like they get so passionate and they feel so called, and they are called, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
But the journey to being called isn't just, it's not like you just step into this 30-year job at a church or 30-year job at a nonprofit. Like the journey's just wild. And I think that I'm hoping that's what people gain from your story of just your
Yeah.
journey has been
You're like,
so crazy.
what do you do when you're stepping out in obedience and you have all this knowledge of God, but your experience is not
Yeah.
matching? Right.
Yeah, that's hard. That's so hard because, I walked away. I threw up my hands. I was like, I'm done.
Yeah.
Like, I know you're God. I have
Yeah.
no doubt you're God. I've seen you be God, and I've experienced power like in nature and whatever that like, and so I'll worship you. Like, I'll come to church and I'll sing the songs, but I was done trusting him.
Mm.
And it was honestly, it was a few years, about 2.5 years before I came back around to seeing God as God again, and as friends, really, more than God.
What did anything big happen to sort of rebuild that trust?
I mean,
Or what is that
it was just more
two
of
and a
the,
half year
it was
journey?
more of the same, man. It if I'm honest, it felt like there was about almost 10 years there that was just train wreck after train wreck after train wreck, and that's
Mhm.
why I said earlier that like we were about to go into the ringer, because we came up from Vegas and I couldn't find a job. I was overqualified for everything. Ended up doing handyman stuff. People felt sorry for me. So like, hey, you can install a dishwasher, right? Or
Mhm.
fix my fence or whatever.
Yeah.
And like, I do construction now. We have a construction and a roofing company, and that's really how I got into that. But that's not what I wanted to do. And so I loved medicine. Part of at the fire department, I got to do medical stuff, and
Mhm.
I really, the human body fascinates me, and God is just amazing in that. And I mean, let's face it, if I'm honest, God made me really smart, and I don't say that to brag, but He did, and I grasped those concepts really well, and so I was pursuing that, and I went back to school and I was going to finish or get a pre-med undergrad and go to medical school. And I was doing it all for the wrong reasons. I mean, I wanted to make money. I wanted the prestige. And I mean, I was really willing to lay down whatever I needed to do to get there. And the song came on. I think it synced just real. I don't even remember, but it's Lead Me. And there's a line in the song that says, I'm pursuing things instead of them. Right. And God just broke me in that moment. I had to pull off. I was driving on the road. I had to pull over. I couldn't drive anymore. And I knew, okay, well, I'm going to finish where I'm at, and then I'm going to pull out. And I did. And
I
so,
remember that.
huh?
I remember that. You're pretty new to our group then.
No.
Whenever
No.
you were doing medical school,
that was
and then
the
you were
second
studying
time.
for the MCAT.
That was the second time.
Okay.
So this is the first
Oh
time.
wow. So what year is this?
This is 2011.
Okay.
2012. It all kind of runs together now. But
Interesting.
and so I pulled out, and then I was just doing audio, video stuff, really whatever I could get a hold of to put food on the table. And God provided. Like we never went without.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't feel like we had enough. And I really couldn't be proud of where I was, but God was faithful in all of that. And so I ended up going to work. I got an opportunity to go into this house for this billionaire family or millionaire. I don't know. They had this gigantic house in a prestigious neighborhood, and they had this phone system that could operate large towers in this house, and it wasn't working. And somebody told them that I could fix it. And so I sat down at this console for this telephone, and this is God. I mean, he's so faithful. I called tech support and they're like, well, you've got to do like 2 years of training before we'll even talk to you about this particular system that they had. I'm like, okay, well, all I need is the password. Just tell me, break the password. And so I hung up the phone and I'm just like praying, okay, God, what do you want me to do? And I just tried something and it was the password. And so within like 45 minutes, I had everything working. And I have no idea. I can't even tell you how I did that. And so they ended up asking me to put a home theater system in and do some other stuff. And then I ended up going to work for them full time, managing personal properties and some other things. And I really love that family a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought what they had that I wanted. And so it's just another ringer where God was squeezing something out. And I watched how all of that stuff had them. And, a series of events led to me being dismissed again. I got in a wreck in a company truck, and then ended up getting sued for embezzlement because they thought I was stealing money. And
These are
ended up
people you loved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so another of the same, right? So the camp and the church and now this company. And so I'm back out on my own again.
Yeah.
And doing handyman stuff again. And this time it worked out where we were able to get on our feet and start doing construction. This was in 2013, and started building homes and actually, really surviving now. And so we fast forward a few years, in 2016, decided to go back to school to do medicine again.
Mm-hmm.
And this was for the right reasons.
Yeah.
I felt like God was drawing us in. And so I did that. We went back to school and I did well, finished in the top of all of my classes. And so this is when I met you, when I went backpacking with the guys in the Pecos. And so I was studying for the MCAT at that time. And so I took the MCAT.
Well, you're supposed to be studying for the MCAT.
I was.
If I remember right.
Yeah.
You never got around to studying for the MCAT.
No, I didn't. I bought the curriculum, but I barely cracked the book.
Yeah. And
so I went and I registered for the test, and I hadn't studied for it. And the time came to take the test, and I wasn't going to go. And Melanie, my wife, encouraged me. She was like, well, just
do it.
Just go ahead and take it. We got a few tries. Get this one under your belt, and you'll know what to expect. And so I did, and I ended up doing really, really well on a test that I didn't study for. And I was still taking classes that were on the test too.
Yeah.
And so I actually scored well enough that, like, man, the field just opened up on where I could go to school. And we started praying through where to go. And so, like, during this time, like, I'm physically building my own house. We're living in a camper, and we had the opportunity to buy some land. And so, like, I'm getting squeezed in every direction.
Yeah.
And fortunately, I had just an awesome group of guys to walk with and encourage me along the way. And if you've ever tried to build anything or, like, do construction, you understand that things don't work the way they're supposed to.
Yeah.
Like, I got this and it's supposed to go there, and like, it's engineered to go there, but it just won't go there. And
it's constant solving problems.
Oh gosh, man. So, like, I would just get in these fits with God. Like, why can't you help me? Why aren't you here? Where are you at? He was so faithful the whole time. And so here I am. I've scored this really amazing score on the tests. And I think I'm going to go to school now. And God says, no. I'm like, no. This is like, this is the culmination of like everything we've been working toward. Like why school? Why the hardship? Why? And he just said, I need you to know that you could. And so a few weeks earlier, I was on a bulldozer and was cutting a road in, and something had gone wrong, and I found myself physically kicking the bulldozer, screaming at myself about how stupid I was, and cussing at myself about how stupid I was. And that's a name that I had lived under for a long, long time. And God showed me in that moment that I'm not stupid. In fact, I can not logically ever say I'm stupid again.
Mm-hmm.
And it changed my life in a moment. It changed the way I handled problems, challenges, clients, my family, myself. And I mean, if I'd like to say that everything changed, right? And I was different from then on. And I still struggle with that name, right? Stupid.
Mm.
But God is faithful, and he continues to remove that and those talons of the past, and
That's a great new name response at camp.
Yeah. It's been told a few times.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I try not to get emotional.
Good. We don't like tears on the podcast.
Man, I started out emotional.
Messes up the AV equipment
today. Yeah, I know. Don't cry on the.
Yeah.
Oh, so yeah, so we're building our house, and we're doing that and building other people's houses, and I'm getting plugged in at True North, and God removing old identities and old strongholds. And I think it was somewhere around 2019 where we really started to come out of that 10-year period of the ringer. And man, if I look back now, those were really, really hard years.
Mm-hmm.
Hard on me, hard on us. It was really hard on Melanie, my wife.
Mm-hmm.
She shouldered a lot of that growth that I had to go through. But it was required for me to be. Wow. For me to get my heart back.
Mm-hmm.
And so, man, I get to live today whole. And so, I've been going through the book right now. John Mark Comer's Practicing the Way. And so right now, it's just talking about the ability to sit and feel God's love.
Mm.
And I can do that.
Mm-hmm.
And before I couldn't. There's no way.
Do you feel like there was a moment that you got your heart back? Or was it just kind of compiling?
Gosh, it was more analog than that, I think. It was like God just putting the puzzle back together.
Yeah.
Because it was like, I feel like I got a trash bag full of pieces. That was my heart,
Yeah.
And he would just reach in there one piece at a time and just put it in its proper spot. And each time he did that, it was through something that hurt or something that sucked or a situation that just was just horrible and wrenching. But afterwards there was life. And I think I don't know. But that was part of the removal of the old man.
Mm. That's so good. I've pointed out many times about the growth, not just the growth, but just the difference in you in the 6 years that I've known you. Like, you're a different person. Like, you're a person that has sat back and analyzed who you are, where your heart is, and like, you want to get better. all the time.
I do want to get better. And Romans 12:9-18 talks about loving well, and not just don't just pretend like you love, but actually love.
Mm-hmm.
And that verse really stands out to me.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're going to be like Jesus, and we're going to walk the narrow path,
Yeah.
then that's what we have to do.
Yeah. I think I've also seen you like do the things that you're supposed to do, even when I don't think your heart's not ready for it or not as invested in it, but you do it to honor God, right? Like this is all positive. Like you do it in a way that you know it's good for you, and you know that your heart's going to catch up to it if you just keep putting yourself in that environment, and that's a really special thing, because I think a lot of myself included, like I'll play it safe a lot so that like if my heart's not there, I'm not going to go there yet.
Yeah.
But I've seen you a lot of times you kind of put your neck on the line and put yourself out there because you know it's the right thing to do. And that's really beautiful to see.
Well, it's the faithfulness of God. You know, when I was in Vegas, I got to see God move in a couple of ways that just really blew me away. You know, a lot of times we'll pray for people like, oh, you got this thing, let me pray for you. And it's always with the attitude of like, I'm just doing what I'm supposed to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that I ever expect God to actually like, okay, this person can't walk and I'm going to pray for them and then they're going to walk out of here, right? Like that doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
But there was an instance where a woman had asked me to pray for her ear. She had debilitating tinnitus. And so I had some anointing oil. I anointed her and I was praying over her, put my hand on her ear. And I remember like my eyes are closed, but she moved. And so I opened my eyes and she was looking at me with like this look of like something happened.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of scared me, to be honest with you. And then she's like, it's gone. It's gone. She started screaming and like started running around like it's gone. I'm like, what? Really? Like God actually healed you?
Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh. And then I saw it with a baby that I got to pray over that wasn't supposed to live. And he lived.
Mm-hmm.
And like in the moment that we were praying over him, made a miraculous turn like right then. And then just continued to just come out of it. And it was like, oh, wow. And so I saw God's faithfulness there, and I've seen it several times since. And then there's been many times where I've been able to, or had an opportunity to just like step out and say something, or step out and lead something, or step out and do something that I'm not prepared to do. And I get to watch God just step into me and his words come out of me. And then I get to look really wise and good because he's speaking through me, but it's not me.
Mm-hmm.
It's not my wisdom or my knowledge. And so I know that there are men out there that's been through a base camp that I've led or whatever that are like, dude, you're so wise. No, I'm not. You see Jesus, not me.
Yeah.
I love it when guys are like, you told me this thing, and you're like, I remember us talking, but I don't remember saying that.
Yeah.
You know?
That happens quite a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's talk about kind of the last thing here. And this isn't to magnify or glorify True North. This is to magnify and glorify Jesus and the work that he does in it.
Yeah.
But like, can you talk about what your experience in True North family and it has been like, and leading, and like, do you have any cool stories that you would share, and then also like just why you are so passionate about the mission of True North?
So, man, I haven't, most of my breakthroughs, my big breakthroughs came outside of True North.
Mm-hmm.
So either like what we cover at True North, I learned before here, or they've come outside or at my house with the bulldozer, with the MCAT test or whatever. And so stepping into my role at True North, like, I haven't had the breakthroughs that I've seen happen, but I've seen so many men come face to face with Jesus. I've seen so many men hear his voice and be forever changed. I've seen God move storms so that we can have our planned agenda on the weekend. At 5 different camps, I've seen it where we are going to get rained out, and the storm is parted, literally. One time I was in Kansas, Jeff Bolonsic was my prayer director, and he's taking screenshots of the radar as God does this, right? And we end up outside at this event, and you can look up and see the stars, and there's a ring of storms all around us. So the lightning is just all the way around us, and we're looking up at stars, and I mean, it goes unhindered because God's agenda is greater. Yeah. And I think one of my favorite stories is a guy named Nick. It was at Anadarko, and he came and he grabbed me. He's like, "Man, can I talk to you?" I'm like, "Sure, man." So we went and found, I remember those couches in the back, and went and sat down. And so he's on a couch, I'm on a couch, and he's like, "Man, I don't know." It took him minutes to compose himself enough to even to get past the "I'm just," but he was just, "I'm just so pissed off." I'm like, "Why?" He's like, "Man, I came here to play paintball, man." Like, paintball. And now I got to go home and I'm a different person. Like, what am I supposed to tell my wife, man? Like, I came here to play paintball, and like, he just couldn't get over the fact that like he was a new man. Yeah. But the joy of the new man was a little overshadowed by the fact that his wife was married to the old man still, and he was going to have to confront that when he went home. And I mean, it's that story over and over and over. And so base camp is so powerful, and the ascent and the summit are so powerful. And the curriculum is really good. Like, what we do in the curriculum and what we cover is life-changing. They're tools in the toolbox. But where the miracles happen is in the quiet times. When we give men a question or a few questions to wrestle with, and we encourage them to go and seek the Father with this question. And they're in a protected environment where there's no distraction, and there's people praying over them, and they get to have that encouragement to do the uncomfortable thing and to get outside of themselves. And miracles happen. They really do. And that's what I love about what we do here, is getting to see that happen, and getting to see lives changed, getting to see families changed and legacies changed. And it's just unbelievable. I say it all the time, but I can't believe we get to do this.
Yeah. Yeah. That's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
Ryan, you got any other questions for Christopher?
Man, I just want to say, like, I've seen the change in you, and it lends itself, like, so often we can see a guy who's following Jesus and think like they've arrived, right? But the growth in you from the time we first met a decade ago, right, has been incredible. It's been so encouraging to see so often. I see something in you that makes me, like, it prompts me to seek God in that category, if you will. And that's a lot of my story, my spiritual journey, outside of camps and just God showing up. Like I can so relate to you building the house, and doing my own kitchen cabinets. Like I felt abandoned. It was like my father-in-law was supposed to help me, and all these things were kind of, and then, at the end of that, it's like, well, what's that about? You ask the question, but it's the modeling of seeing someone else's walk that really brings you along in your spiritual journey. And so we've experienced a lot. And then you're one of the most generous people that I know. And I know that it comes out of a healed heart. It's not self-serving. You're just walking with Jesus because you give sacrificially. And it's beautiful. I've seen it with homeless people that just show up to our group, at Brahms. And then me and my family have experienced it through working together outside of True North. You just are incredibly generous, and you bring Jesus wherever you go, and then your aptitude for learning new things is ridiculous. Like, I mean, I tell James all the time, like it's ridiculous. It's impressive. So, and it just shows like the enemy can use something that is so not true. And it can weasel its way into our identity in such a way that would keep you from really fulfilling your purpose.
I really believed that I was stupid for so many years,
which is just silly.
Yeah.
But I love you dearly, and you've been an awesome friend.
Yeah.
And
you're kind of a pain in the butt a lot of times too.
Yeah,
it's kind of my MO.
That's part of it.
Yeah. Hey, Christopher, how'd camp go this weekend? What'd you do? Oh yeah, I did this one thing that nobody else has ever done. But and I'm like, oh, Christopher, like, why'd you do that? He's like, no, it went great. Okay, I've just just a pain in the butt.
Jesus told me to do it. Argue with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I'm thankful for you as well. It's been so beautiful building our friendship over the past few years, and really excited for years and years of ministry with you. Promise you I'm not going to walk out with a coffee cup and saying you need to leave.
It's time for you to leave.
No doubt.
Oh gosh. Yeah, I might kick you in the nuts.
Yeah. No, you're loved. You belong here.
Yeah.
You have this unique thing of you're one of the directors that we have that people are like, oh, I'm going to the one that Christopher's directing. Like that's the type of stuff we hear. And that's a really cool thing. And so, well done so far. We have so much more that we get to do together.
Yeah.
I'm so thankful for you. And very thankful for you coming on to the podcast.
Man, thanks for having me. And man, I love you guys. I love that I get to do this with you. And man, if anything, like I get in the way a lot. I know I do. And I know I have a propensity to be a turd. A really nasty, stinky one too. But I pray that if you see, man, if you see anything, I pray that you see Jesus in me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I pray that I can model his love and his goodness. And I promise if you ever see any wisdom or anything that's like good, you're looking at Jesus. It's not me.
That's good. So good.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Well, thank you, man. Thank you for coming on. Love you.
Thanks for having me. I love you guys too.